Hi, my name's Terry McCosker and I'd like you to join me as we discuss what CarbonLink can do for you as a farmer.
What can CarbonLink do for you to assist you in sequestering carbon on your property and monetising what you add to your land? As mentioned before, there is a 6-step process in both baselining and in calculating carbon dioxide. CarbonLink will set up the projects which involve the development of the project, the methodology, the project definition, the stratification, the land use, and recording and describing what the land use change is, doing the initial measurements and the subsequent measurements, assisting with the compliance monitoring, doing the reporting for you, organising the auditing, organising the registration of your carbon credits on the registry, and also managing your buffer, which is your risk management strategy. We can do also the mapping and the stratification. That's quite a complex process, but you will get those maps recorded for you and developed out of whatever data is available and whatever process that we use. After the mapping and stratification, CarbonLink can also do the soil extraction in the way that is required. To be able to use the high-level technology for the subsequent measurement of the soil cores, they have to be taken out intact and put through the scanning instruments. CarbonLink can also do the soil analysis for you, and that soil analysis includes the carbon levels in the soil, the bulk density in the soil, the moisture, the roots, the pore space, and the aggregates can all be measured with some of the technology that's currently on its way. We can finally do the soil carbon calculation, and this is quite a complex process of firstly converting all the data from the scanning and the stratification and all the data that comes out of the soil analyses, crunching all of that together to calculate the carbon yield and give you a very accurate measurement of how much carbon is in your soil. Finally, we need to do for you the carbon dioxide calculations. And if you think this stuff is easy, methodology consists of about 30 or 40 pages of those types of equations. CarbonLink can also help you then trade your carbon. So you would commit to a defined land title area. Soil organic carbon from that area can be contracted for 25 to 50 years. The organic carbon sequestration sold has to remain for at least 50 years under what we think the new government will do in Australia. What CarbonLink then does will aggregate your carbon credits with those of other farmers to make up large orders. The large emitters, for example, don't want to go around and buy 5,000 tonnes here and 6,000 tonnes somewhere else and 10,000 tonnes from somebody else down the road. They want to come to an organisation that can put together 500,000 or 1 million tonnes of carbon credits in one go. And that is also the role that CarbonLink plays as an aggregator to assist you to get the best price for your carbon. When you're sequestering carbon in soils, there's a sequestration period and a maintenance period or a maintenance cycle. And sequestration is likely to occur for anywhere from sort of 30 odd years up to 50 odd years. And your maintenance period will then cut in after that. So if you had a sequestration period of 50 years and a permanence period of 50 years, then there's really no requirement for a strict maintenance period after that. But during the sequestration period, there is a requirement to maintain what has been sold off. So by physical sampling every 5 to 10 years for the sequestration period, we can then work out how much carbon has actually been sequestered in the soils, convert that into carbon dioxide, take away the initial baseline or the previous measurement period, and that determines the number of tonnes of carbon dioxide that you may be able to list on the Australian Carbon Registry. And as time goes on, we consider that we'll probably be able to do a lot of monitoring by remote sensing and perhaps modelling between soil measurements, and in the long term that should cut down the cost of actually coming out and doing soil samples every 5 to 10 years. So the question is it worth it? And these are some projected incomes off the large site that we did in New South Wales, and we estimate that the gross margin from carbon, and this is after all costs, and allowing a 20% buffer at $20 a tonne for carbon dioxide, is around about $70 per hectare per annum for the full sequestration period, which could be anything from 30 to 50 years. So that certainly is worth the initial investment. Now, your initial investment will depend entirely on the level of intensity that you have and your potential to sequester soil carbon. If you're in a relatively intensive area and you have the potential to sequester anything from 0.5 tonne of soil organic carbon per hectare per annum up to 1.5 tonnes, then we would recommend that you use the full, very accurate soil carbon estimates, and that's likely to cost you initially around about $29 per hectare to implement. On the other hand, if you're an extensive pastoral holding and you've got 2 or 3 or 4 or 500,000 hectares that you would like to baseline, our targeted goal is to get that back to $1 a hectare, but under current technology we think that that's going to be around about $2 per hectare. The downside to having a less cost and a larger area is that it'll be lower accuracy, and generally you're also going to be sequestering less carbon per hectare. The thing in your favour, however, is that you have a lot of hectares. And somewhere in between those two is what we call intermediate projects, where the terrain, the vegetation, the landscape precludes a high degree of vehicle access and therefore the very accurate sampling techniques, and we will use a hybrid of part of the extensive process and part of the intensive process, and the potential there may be around 0.2 of a tonne soil organic carbon per hectare, and the accuracy won't be as good as the intensive system. So how can the risks be mitigated? Firstly, the permanence risk can be mitigated through having buffer pools and by not counting labile carbon. Now, labile carbon is the carbon that's in soil organic matter and in living organisms, and that carbon can disappear quite quickly in a drought or in a fire. We don't want to count that as being carbon that you've sequestered because it can come and go very quickly. We can also assist in the permanent periods with modelling soil carbon and by monitoring over time, particularly ground cover. If you're maintaining ground cover, you're likely to be maintaining the carbon that was sequestered. Management ability is also likely to have a significant impact on your ability to sequester carbon. That ability can be mitigated through buffer pools and again through monitoring. And fire and drought can be mitigated through having buffer pools, and those are pools of carbon credits that are not for sale initially, and by not counting the labile carbon, which is the carbon that can come and go in a fire or a drought. So what should you do now? I think firstly decide whether you want to be a carbon farmer or not. That's the critical thing. You can opt in or you can opt out of this. Establish if you have the opportunity to sequester carbon or offset. So that could be woodlot, soil carbon, methane, fertiliser reduction, etc. Baseline your soil carbon and bank it if you have the potential to sequester. Now, soil carbon is a bankable item. So if you've done a baseline and you are sequestering carbon, whether it's actually been remeasured or not, and when it is, then the carbon credits that you have put into that landscape are a bankable item once they're listed on the registry. The other thing is that if the price is low, you can actually wait for the price to come back up. And carbon credits can be used to offset variations in rural income. So if you have a few good years, you wouldn't sell your carbon while you're actually sequestering it. And then if you have some crook years with either prices or droughts, then you might actually then hop in and sell some of the carbon credits that you've been sequestering over the last 5 or 10 years and help you even out your income over those poorer years. So if you would like any information on how this operates, please contact CarbonLink and we'll see if we can help you in any way we can.